Hey everybody, welcome back to Georgia MAGA on Tommy Time. Well, the dust is cleared and Pilgrim's Pride has decided to seek its entertainment elsewhere, to quote old favorite movie of mine. And I know that there are plenty of y'all that are looking at this and saying, yeah, and that, and I've got a bridge to sell you. And hey, I share your skepticism. I'm sure that Pilgrim's Pride is, or any other poultry interested industry, is not done with looking at Franklin County. Um, Unfortunately, that's more and more, I think, going to be the price of being located where we are. And with development pushing in on us from all directions now, is um, we're going to have to keep the radar up all the time now. So, congratulations to all the folks who did the job this time. There were a bunch of us that were involved last time that led to the founding, quite frankly, of Advanced Franklin, though back then it was called Stop the Rendering, which has been sort of a battle cry this time around too. But that was the origin of Advanced Franklin. I just want to congratulate all the folks who've done a lot of hard work to at least reach this point, understanding that, again, need to keep the radar up. However, I will continue to emphasize and hammer the point that I did in my last video, which was, with that said, this county has to have economic development. And there, I know, is still a very live effort that is anti the water treatment plant. Now, just like I said with the rendering plant, I'm not saying that where the wastewater treatment plant for Franklin Springs is ideal. Frankly, I don't have enough data or knowledge or so forth to uh, make that determination myself. I have read what has been in mainly the paper and the engineers coming and presenting before Franklin Springs. And, I think it was a at least interesting point that, according to the article, that the water that they showed that was a product of, I don't know if it's the current rendering plant or what would be the product of the future rendering plant, but whichever it was clearer than what is currently in the river. So, that is an important point to consider from my point of view. And just to, cut to the chase and be a little more simple about the bottom line, is that this county needs some sort of industrial economic development, and that means there's going to have to be additional wastewater treatment somewhere. And unfortunately, as I warned in my last video, these events, like we've just gone through with the rendering plant, too often become manipulated by those with different agendas, just because people are frankly scared. Now, I know that there are tons of folks that have been involved and have the best of motives, but you start getting government and lawyers and bureaucrats involved in local decisions. And those lawyers and bureaucrats and government are not your local government for sure. And last time I checked, in Franklin County, we don't have a ton of lawyers. We got a few, a handful, good handful, but they ain't a bunch. And so when they start descending on a place like Franklin County, and it's over a local development issue, it tends to be pushing an agenda that frankly isn't what the 86% of people who voted in the last presidential election indicated themselves to be, which is Republican. much less conservative, much less small government. So, as I noted in the last video, I'd seen at least one website in support of the anti-rendering that was soliciting environmentalists to come to Franklin County. Now, if you're an environmentalist from the standpoint of, hey, I just don't want a bunch of bad smelling stuff in the air and I want to be able to fish out my back door, I got no particular problem with that. But when it reaches the point of bringing in government agencies and regulations and rules, uh, imposing on local control to the point that you can't get industry, that is what you 100% do not want, because then you're not able to get the kind of industry that is necessary to get the tax digest that keeps you from having to raise residential property taxes, which in the absence of all that runs taxes up so high that people can't afford to stay here. So, and that's the whole point, clearly. So, can't lose sight of the fact that there are still plenty out there, unfortunately partisan, unfortunately Democrat. I know a lot of people don't want to, you just want to keep everything kumbaya and everybody get along, but that's not the way politics works. And if you don't stand up to it early, you're going to be fighting it later. And so, at least here, as much as I can get in front of the microphone to talk about it, you'll be hearing that mantra. So, but a big victory for sure. Congratulations to everybody involved, and everybody needs to keep the radar up, as we've said. And so, moving on from that, I think that I will first talk about what I had mentioned sort of the tail end of the last video too, and that was the new water authority that's being brought to us by none other than everybody's favorite around here, Frank Ginn. So the paper is going to have an article about this tomorrow. I've got my advanced copy on the phone, and Senator Ginn says in it that, well, let's see, I've called the quote up right here. What does he say? He has established a Northeast Georgia Water Authority. He's introduced legislation for it. It's by no means done yet. But near the end of the last General Assembly session, as I mentioned this in the last video, as I've mentioned, Ginn introduced a bill that would establish this new water authority. And he says, quote, "What I'm trying to do right now, my goal is to create the legal entity so that you can open yourself up for some grants or some study money from the feds and from the state." Franklin County can never win. And the reason I say that is the voting members of this thing are ourselves, Banks County, Madison County, the City of Commerce, the City of Elberton, and the Jackson County Water and Sewer Authority. So we all know Banks is, about half developed with Banks Crossing and everything pushing in on it from Habersham and Hall and those directions, as well as again the 85 and Banks Crossing. We know Madison, south end of it, so right on the edge of Athens. City of Commerce, obviously, City of Elberton, obviously City, and the Jackson County Water Authority. So of course, that gives Jackson County 2 votes, their water authority and the city of Commerce. So the 2 most rural places on here, Madison County, the maybe upper 2/3 of it, or 3/4. Franklin County, if all the other city places have already experienced all this development, decide, that's Jackson County's got 2 votes right there, so they'll probably be together more times than not. You got Elberton, you got Banks, which is right there at Banks Crossing next to Commerce. You're outvoted every time. I'm pretty slick. I will say that. But if you read the legislation, and as the article says, it's about establishing reservoirs and other water sources. And some people had pointed out an interesting fact. I noted this in the course of the debate over the wastewater treatment plant, that it calls for a recreational area to be built adjacent to it. Well, the water treatment legislation calls for the same thing in the places that it, establishes operations or grants, funds, or whatever, and everything that it does. So that's the carrot of the legislation, so to speak, to different areas. Oh, we're going to build all these water resources, treatment plant, so on. But we're going to put you some recreation right over here too, and you'll get a improvement for the community in that way. But we're going to develop all of this water resources so we can drive all this development. And as anybody knows, if you're developing, you got to have water. You got to have, as we're in the throes of discussing right now in Franklin County, you got to have wastewater treatment, and that's what that legislation is about. So now, as I said at the top of this video, there's going to have to be some economic and industrial development, that's for sure. But you want that handled at the local level. You don't want some authority run by Frank Ginn. I think it's written for him to make himself the chairman of it. I could be wrong about that, but I wouldn't doubt it. And rigged in the way that I've just explained in terms of the voting members. Now, it does say, others can, be added to it later and so forth. But certainly there'll be criteria, and that criteria certainly will place those with the resources and characteristics and assets. That's the one I was really looking for. Assets that the authority is looking for over others. So that's one to keep an eye on, because you get a big water authority that's run by somebody outside the county, outside the localities. Once more, somebody else not with your interest necessarily at heart, making decisions for you. And then finally, this one is one I started on several months back, and got some blowback from, and I'm sure I'm going to get some more. But quite frankly, as I said a video or two back too, I guess I'm just not going to have to. I'm going to have to stop worrying about being as measured anymore, and that's this tax issue. So there was a bill passed and signed by the governor at the end of the last session, would have allowed our current commissioners to extra 30 days to go ahead and opt in to the exemption on assessments that the 581 that everybody voted for back in last fall's election. But based on everything that I know about, and I've kept an eye out, our commissioners or none of the rest of our local government, city councils or mayors, chose to avail themselves of that either. So what that means is that instead of your taxes being held to the rate of inflation, you're just going to be subject to whatever the assessors and whatever millage the county and the Board of Education sets. When I went through this a couple of months ago and actually visited the county board and the Board of Education, and the county board, to its credit, had said, we are going to consider some future tax relief for residents down the road. Well, I mean, we need to start hearing about it, and we need to start, frankly, hearing from the Board of Education about, how it's going to uh, uh, help with the taxes, because the way that we are situated right now, and you'll see in the paper tomorrow, there's articles about that too. We're with the same system that we had because our local governments decided to not opt in to the homestead exemption. Now, again, to the county board's credit, they said they were planning some sort of other relief. Hadn't heard that out of any other local governments. But this gets back to another issue that I had written a letter to the paper about, as well as one I think a lot of people that are watching this are also probably familiar with, and that is DOGE. County needs DOGE. I mean, if you're not going to opt into a quite frankly easy way of holding yourself accountable, which is rate of inflation on tax increases, then you got an obligation to show to the taxpayers of the county where the money's going. And when I went to the Board of Education, I say, well, 85% of it, I think the county says 85% of it is spent by the Board of Education. The Board of Education says, well, we got all these mandates on us from the state. We got to spend all this money this way and that way and so forth. Well, and I know they have sessions probably once a year where they roll through their presentation or whatever of what they have to do in terms of public discussion of the budget. But quite frankly, putting the bare minimum notice in the county paper and on the radio isn't enough. If you're going to say to residents, we're not going to enact the tax relief that the state put there to be enacted, then you need to explain it, and you need to take a proactive and diligent approach to informing people about how their taxes are going to be kept down. Because by saying nothing, you get what you got from me 3 months ago, which is me hearing about this and showing up at the county board and saying, why aren't you enacting the tax cut that we all voted for 2 months ago, which is now 7 months ago? When you don't answer those questions for long enough, even if you're sitting in a chair with an R by your name, which is everybody that is in an elected office in this county that isn't nonpartisan. I'm not sure if we've even got any, but maybe there is one or two. Then you begin to earn at least the um, title of Republican in name only. Because if you're not keeping taxes down, that's not Republican, that's Democrat. If you're not keeping taxes down, that's not conservative, that's liberal. That's spending money on government, which necessarily makes it bigger. As I've said before, no government ever got smaller by spending more money. No government ever got smaller by taxing people more. So need to hear about the tax relief plans from the county, frankly, from the department, from the Board of Education, and um, and frankly, you ought to call it DOGE, whatever you want to call it, a audit, a budget presentation that needs to be made. And people in the county need to understand where the money's going, and so that when if you have to show up with big assessments or big millage increases, there's some way of weighing the relationship. We'll spend more money, where's it going? Quite frankly, not opting in, to me, even after giving the board some grace initially on saying they were going to offer, and I still do if they've got a plan. I look forward to seeing it. That on tax relief alternative to the opt-in, but the proposal that was in 581 was a rate increase tied to inflation. If you can't live within that, then there's probably something not working right because everybody else out here is. There's probably something else not working right in your budgeting, in your management, in your different government authorities here, county, city, Board of Education, so forth. So this was a long one. Another little stretch in between, but it was time to get another one out. Hope you'll subscribe, like, share, do all that social media stuff with this, whatever platforms that you frequent. This I generally put on Advanced Franklin, my Keep Franklin County Country page, and not those are Facebook, YouTube, and whenever I get around to talking about some national politics, maybe I'll stretch out onto some other platforms. But for folks around here, I think that's probably adequate for these topics. So thanks again. We'll definitely appreciate you supporting me to the extent that you at least slog your way through. And I look forward to getting back with you as soon as time avails me next.